Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. And we're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question. And that is, how can the narcissist be so distant? How can they be involved in a relationship that is plagued with so much disconnect? So I feel that that's a great viewer question to understand the distance or feeling sort of what I would consider in my mind is basically emotional inavailability. When we talk about someone who is feeling distant, it's that they're not really connected to us emotionally, and we all need connection in our life. We all need to feel that someone who we can bond to, who gets us, who understands us, who can laugh with us, who doesn't berate and insult, and the relationship is not plagued with this negativity or the mind games or always feeling that you're less than, or you have to kind of be sneaky or paranoid around this person, that there's something going on all the time. And so the distance really is just that. It's the fact that they, in the covert narcissist, they need to basically resort or retreat. They need to go into their own little situation, their own little kingdom, their own garage, the study, the library. They're always kind of in this retreating mode. God only knows what they're doing in the basement or the attic or whatever it is where they seem to always retreat to. And this can also feel like they're in a retreat mode even when they're with you. In other words, feeling like they're not really, present, or they're not emotionally available. So this then creates a counterforce where you have to overextend yourself to see if they're available, to test them. So you feel like there's something missing, or that there's a gap in the relationship that's causing you to feel that you must always overextend yourself, or wonder, really as sort of a response, as if there is something wrong with you. Why am I being treated this way? Why am I feeling this coldness, this distance, this sort of callousness, and why are they so distant? So we're really going to dive in and focus in on that question. Oh yes, and before we get started, I really want to give a huge shout out to those who have recently donated to the channel. Thank you so much for your donations and your support. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to be including a link for those who want to donate and give back to the channel. I have been requested to try to put a link somewhere in the video. I can go ahead and try to do that, but there is always a link at the About page here on the Peace and Harmony channel if we've been a positive resource for you. So why does the narcissist or the psychopath feel so distant? Why are they so quote-unquote away? Why are they sort of always out of reach, or what I would consider emotionally unavailable? It is because the covert narcissist, the narcissist and the psychopath, they delight in being superior to or controlling others. And to maintain this position, they must always sort of play the games of cat and mouse. They must always play the game of keeping score. They must always play that game of almost like hide and seek. If you remember back in the day, I don't know if kids really still much play this anymore, but there was always a hide and seek where you would always try to find where someone was hiding, behind the curtains, underneath the bed, and then you tag them, and then next you were it. So it's really, and also like this game of cat and mouse. In other words, where you're injured and you're feeling wounded, yet this person still wants to play with you and see if you have taken enough. Can you take more? And so the cat and mouse, in other words, where I will bite the mouse, it's still sort of squirming, but I'll bat it around to see if it's still played with, and I won't bite it hard enough so that it won't be completely done in, but it'll still kind of be like my plaything. So it's really very much the same way with a malignant narcissist or a psychopathic relationship. In other words, they want to see how hard you can try for them. They delight in this control over others, to control and get sort of, responses back from you that are designed to give you results in order to give you what it is that you're looking for or what they're looking for in the relationship. And this can be either being submissive. So in other words, that person, wants you to be in a continual state of pain, questioning, or doubt. The paranoid state where you kind of go into that, you're almost in like an investigative journey where you're trying to wonder where they are. Were you really at that business meeting? Were you really here at the gym? Who is that on the phone? There's always this questioning component that is part of the relationship. And especially in the malignant, narcissist, and psychopath side, they're trying to get you always sort of in a gaslighted state where you're, in that tipping of reality, where you're always in a very highly aroused fear state. And you're always responsive to their mind games. In other words, creating that triggered environment where you're always seeing if you will flinch and flail. They will do things that they know provoke you. Be on the phone while they're supposed to be at a date, and you've said, put that away. And they're like, who are you texting to? And they'll answer with a sly, wouldn't you want to know? Oh, it's just my girlfriend, it's just my boyfriend. And then, just kidding, and then they'll wonder why you're sort of looking, off in the distance. There's this disconnect, there's this distance that they are playing you on. So to get you to over obligate, to create in that fear, uncertainty state, the condition of being insecure and uncertain creates a lot of motive and will cause people to do very risky things. In other words, that create this feeling of anxiety, fear, and desire, which are all rolled into one, which is a highly addictive neurochemical, where it's, I don't think I have it, but I'm going to try harder. I don't think I have your attention, so I'm going to try harder. I don't think I have your trust, so I'm going to, keep on this uncertainty state. I'm not sure, and so it gets people to try even more. In other words, you're trying to reduce the disharmony or the cognitive dissonance, which is part of the relationship feeling or environment. This feeling of cognitive dissonance. In other words, you're with me, but it doesn't seem like you're really with me. You're my spouse, but something about it feels like I really have to constantly re-win your attention. So this becomes very, very difficult to manage. Why do they do this? Because it keeps the quote-unquote underlings at bay. It keeps their supply at bay. It keeps them in a less empowered state. In other words, it's what they're withholding. It's what they're not giving, which keeps you in that feeling of uncertainty and lack. So in other words, I can't satisfy you, because then everything would be okay. And then what would you be striving for? In other words, if I were to give you the attention, if I were to give you the guidance, then you would be equal to me. We would be on the same wavelength. A narcissist and a malignant narcissist and a psychopath, they don't want to be on the same wavelength. They want to have that disconnect. They want to have that power over others. They're looking for that fear, that wide-eyed gaze. Who are you talking to? What was that? What did you do over the weekend? Or what did you do at your work today? And you're always in that wide-eyed gaze. And it's that fear state, that hyper-arousal, that limbic system hyper-arousal, that fight or flight, which you're always sort of your adrenaline is pumping, and you get addicted to that cortisol. And then the relief of that tension. And then the psychopath and the malignant narcissist will definitely play on that. In other words, they'll keep you in that state of insecurity and uncertainty. Yet people cannot be comfortable for very long in that state, in that distant state, that distrust state. They're always working to get that trust back, get that understanding back where you're on the same wavelength through reciprocity. And so they'll use that to their advantage, where you're always guessing, where you're slightly afraid, you're always insecure, and then it's a one-way street. And this this, can only be tolerated for so long. In other words, people only want to live in that short-term gratification for so long. There has to be a degree of trust. There has to be that state of clarity and rigorous honesty in relationships where there isn't these guessing games, there isn't this distance, there isn't this aloofness where you're pulling them out of the recesses and you're, belly to belly, toe to toe, and really understanding where your chips are in the relationship. And really, and so it's causing the people around them to maintain a state of lack, not get what they're needing, and then that withholding creates even more lack, which then in the mind's eye can only be fulfilled by the narcissist. In other words, it's the feeling that they create that they're the ones with the keys to the kingdom. They're going to be the best love you could ever have, and you will never, because you're, in this gaslighted state, you're fearful, you're paranoia, the things that they, no one would ever want you in a state like this. I'm the smartest you're ever going to get. I'm the best looking. I'm the best provider. In other words, they have this sort of built into the relationship dynamic. I will always overpower you. I will always outsmart you. I will always be in this position and you will always be under here. And so if you try to leave or stop playing the game, you are the loser, so you better keep playing the game. You better keep looking to me as the one and only. So it's like your options are no longer available. You no longer see the solution. You no longer see the bigger picture. You no longer see your strengths. You no longer have a positive I am, because this person is always cultivating this gaslighted state. In other words, it's the withholding. It's the intermittent, reward that they give you, which is, after you question them, after you beg and plead, or after you try so hard to get their favor back and get that approval, that's when they give you the smile, the hugs, the love, the intimacy. They're there for the moment, but then they want to then, go away, and then they want to then focus on their talent, or they need to focus on their job, and then they're in that aloof state once again. So they're using that distance to their advantage to sort of dangle the carrot and then pull it away, dangle the carrot and then pull it away, which keeps you wanting them even more and more. And so it can become a real, situation where you stay with them for too long. In other words, you tolerate the inequity. You tolerate the distance. That distance then becomes a desire, and then you build it up more and more in your mind where, well, if I only become good enough, if I only become more handsome, if I get more muscles, if I, become more attractive, then. So it becomes this contingtional based relationship where only if I please them, if I'm there waiting for them, if they know that I'm their one and only, and I don't go and further myself. In other words, because if I were to leave the relationship, then the distance would grow even greater. So it becomes, the cognitive dissonance becomes even greater. And then that's really when the distance of the physical body language becomes even more prominent. Especially the psychopath, they will use their body language also to communicate this distance and create this sort of enigma or confusion of the mind, where they're then using their body language then to further entice you to either reduce the distance between you, and then becomes part of this hyper arousal. In other words, where you're feeling that you want them present, but then they'll turn their body away and then be looking, and then you'll be trying to be looking at what they're looking at, and then they'll sort of play these mind games with you physically where their body is sending a different message than what it is that they're saying verbally. So it becomes a very, very lethal type of manipulation when you're with a psychopath. In other words, they'll be with you, but then they'll be either texting or they'll be looking off in the distance and just sort of giving this look in their eye like they're being sort of drawn in by something away, and then they'll cause you to look over there, and then they'll bring up something about what they're looking at over there, and then they'll entice you even further. So you're in this really sort of seduced state, which is bent on this distance. So they're able to get control, while very, very strong lethal control over your loyalty to them. So they get you highly addicted to this loyalty, and it's sort of combined with your own self-sabotage and your own guessing, your own uncertainty. So you become highly aroused by this uncertainty in the relationship. So you become really, it's a glue that keeps you there, which is then this hyper arousal, and then they're getting you to sort of want that isolation, which then becomes sort of a real mind hijacking, if you will, where you then become aroused by an isolation or an independence, or don't tell these secrets, or this is what, love is like. So it's getting you to misinterpret physical body language, and you can't see the forest for the trees. So you end up becoming more numb and immune, and then the tolerating. In other words, you become numb to your own growth. You become numb to your own best interests. You become numb to having true personal connection. It becomes a devalued. You begin to devalue those things which are the truly present and truly giving you the good life that you're wanting to. You begin to hold out even more and more and more, and you become more and more entrenched in this type of manipulation. And this can go on for quite a period of time, and it can also be, in my mind, sort of what someone would consider, well, it's self-sacrifice. In other words, I must be self-sacrificing in relationships. This is love. So then it becomes more and more entwined for the reason to stay. So you have to be very, very aware and careful of when someone is using this distance, when they're not really there. Your needs are not really being met. You have to understand what your needs are, especially for intimacy, for closeness, for honesty, for integrity, and not turn it into something then it's not. In other words, the real thing, the good life is more accessible than you think it is. But being around someone who is manipulative in this way can make it seem like that's not attainable or not desirable to you. So and then it turns that what I would call negative early direction thinking, that bad boy, that bad girl thinking even more. It takes you down even lower to the valley, into the valley, or the dark side. And then you have to, in order to regain yourself back, once you've exposed them and seeing that they've either pathologically lied to you, that they have a double life, that they have, all these different things going on that they hid from you. That really, then it's the betrayal that goes, whoa, things have to change. And I need someone who can really get me now. And that's when you really begin to know who your real friends are. The person who will give you the eye contact, who will be there to listen, who will be a heart, and not just play the mind games. Mind games are no longer so fun when you've realized that they only lead you in a wrong direction. So the healthy relationships are really those where there aren't these mind games. You're not feeling a distance, no matter who they are, their title. You're not feeling that things are so far away from you, that things must always be out of your reach. You're no longer playing those charades, those shenanigans. Things begin to make a little bit more sense. In other words, you're finding that you really need to be drawn to that which can be real and very close and more heart-centered, and you're not always sort of playing these games. You're not always playing the shenanigans. You're not always depleting yourself or wearing yourself down. You're no longer living these high-stress relationships. Things are more in congruence, where the body language is, you're able to then see then as you go either no contact with these people or start getting what you need, and then calling, what I call care fronting, speaking up. I'm not playing these mind games. I'm not going to be a carpet here. I'm not going to be a doormat. I'm not going to be walked over here. I'm not going to be left guessing. I'm not going to play this cat and mouse game anymore. I'm not going to play this, this carrot game with you where you're always dangling this in front of me and I never quite get it. I'm not doing this anymore. Until you speak those words and get the courage enough to come out and become a changed person, is to say, well, you might not change, but I'm changing. This relationship might not be changing, but I'm changing. Until you can kind of pull that out and you away and get to that bottom line, the meat of things, and say, this might not change, these games might not change, but I'm changing. I'm going to satisfy my needs. I'm going to be with people who can listen, who can laugh, who can smile, who aren't playing these games with me. Until you can make that a command that you give to yourself, and that you let them know, hey, you guys are off the hook. I'm no longer playing this game. Until you can really speak those words and go no contact or communicate your needs, you're always going to feel this distance. You're always going to feel this wonderment. You're always going to feel what happened to me? How did this happen? You're always going to be asking the wrong questions. So begin today to ask yourself the right questions. What are my true needs, and how can I get them met now? How can I stop playing these mind games? How can I communicate? I'm done with this. I'm done with the mind games. I'm done with the charades. You might not change, but I as a person am changing, and here's what I can change. So, and then focusing on how things can begin to change from this moment moving forward, and not reliving the past. Stop reliving the past. You might have lessons to learn from the past, yes, but stop replaying the horror and reliving that. Start playing and rehearsing the future, because that's what you have now. Now is a present. Now is a gift. It's now getting out of that distance, becoming closer and more aligned and more congruent with yourself. And what do I have now? What do I love about now? What gratitude do I have right now? What I have is mine. And how can I then enhance and improve and lead the good life now moving forward? What changes can I make in order to have and receive more? How can I be open and trust, not only have the trust within myself, but how can I get the distance so that I can grow and then see with clear eyes who is for real, who is playing the mind games with me, and who is not, because I don't want to play those games. Because when you play the games with those types of people, the malignant narcissist and the psychopath, there's always going to be a loser. There's always going to be more casualties. This is just how their life goes, especially in the psychopath. It's how many people, can I fool? And don't be the fool. Don't be played for the fool. Don't be one of those people who they take down. Begin to rise up now, cut it off, go either gray rock, what I would call clear rock, because gray rock means, in the fog to me. Going clear rock to me means you're observing with your own emotional distance and your own self-protection, going no contact, not fueling the disconnect, not fueling the gap anymore, reducing the gap. And then you'll begin with time to see that they are truly playing people, and that it is not desirable. It is not desirable. These people are not desirable. The games, the charentics, the shenanigans, the wondering, the uncertainty, am I pretty enough? Am I handsome enough? Am I man enough? Am I, this and this enough for them? Because it's always, am I enough for them is always the question. How can I be good to me is the next question. How can I resensitize myself and come into the present moment and be mindful, especially of the gifts that the universe is giving me? And how can I allow the universe at large, who's bigger than this manipulator, how can they deliver me the answers, the solution? How can I find those signs that I'm on the right path? How can I give to myself in a situation of comfort? How can I lead the good life now moving forward, and realize that these individuals are not meeting your needs and letting them go? Let them go off, let them ride off into the distance. You'll see that your horse of truth is really there with you and giving you the joyride, the good life that you really want, and taking you into the vistas where you're above and you're really not playing with the tantric, the tantrums. You're not wrestling in the cow mud. You're now riding actually on a steed of truth, which is really what you want. Once you do that, you'll realize that you're really on an upward climb with a strength and a truth that can really carry you to the higher perspectives. Be above it. Be above the distance. Get yourself what you need in the present moment and live in the present moment, and ask yourself, how can I bring more presence and peace and gifts to my reality now? And then ask that and see how the universe delivers. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and continue to do this. Don't tolerate, begin to receive. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. And don't forget, keep your daily reminders in front of you now. Keep those affirmations in front of you now. Reduce the disconnect. Reduce that feeling of tension. Your greatest moments will come from a relaxed body, not from tension. A relaxed body where you're able to then dream and solve and dissolve and heal the wounds that are keeping you in that perpetual state. Begin to see yourself especially as whole and healed, and know what that means to you, and give that gift to yourself today. Peace out. Love you.